The WNBA was engulfed in a new issue with far-reaching consequences as soon as Alyssa Thomas, a Connecticut star player, came to the microphone and blasted Indiana Fever supporters. Thomas stated, "I've never experienced the racial comments I've heard from the Indiana fan base. She has been playing for 11 years. As the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark were knocked out of the playoffs, this happened. The league and Thomas will be subject to repercussions." That is what you heard, exactly. A racially charged confrontation involving Caitlin Clark led to Alyssa Thomas' suspension following a subpar playoff performance against the Minnesota Lynx. The aftermath has stunned the sports world. Thomas chose to single out Caitlin Clark's fans and accuse them of racism instead of taking accountability for her subpar performance.
11-year career, I've never experienced the racial comments from the Indiana Fever fan base. We had her face on a serious matter that happened in this world, and it's unacceptable, honestly. And there's no place for it, and we've been professional throughout the whole entire thing, but I've never been called the things that I've been called on social media, and there's no place for it.
Is Alyssa Thomas's accusation accurate or misplaced? Following Thomas' remarks, there have been contentious debates, with some people endorsing her right to speak out against racism. What's the real story behind M and others' accusations that she mistreated this sensitive topic in order to escape responsibility for her poor performance on the court? Let's start by talking about the primary accusation leveled against Alyssa Thomas. Was this a ruse to draw attention away from her team's playoff exit, or did she actually experience racial slurs from fans? The Indiana Fever fan base had made derogatory remarks regarding race, so she thought it was time to speak up. But here's the issue. Rather than providing specific proof to back up her claims, Thomas issued a broad statement calling all of her followers racist. There were no game-related incidents, audio recordings, or social media posts. She did this, and many are now questioning why. Was this an emotional outburst following a tough loss? Or was it a calculated move to deflect criticism for her subpar postseason play? It is important to understand Caitlin Clark's ascent and her fan base in order to fully appreciate the significance of Thomas's comments. Due to her explosive play style, quick reflexes, and floor leadership, Clark has been the face of the NBA's next generation during the last 12 months. Her popularity is well-deserved, as evidenced by the high ratings her games consistently receive. But it also brings with it considerable criticism. Clark's ascent has drawn criticism, especially from players who feel that her celebrity exceeds their own achievements in a variety of ways. That brings us to the main point of contention. Alyssa Thomas, a seasoned veteran, could understandably feel ignored given that Clark represents a new era in the WNBA, one in which young, energetic women are anticipated to rule the league for years to come. By accusing Clark's supporters of racism, Thomas has not only assailed the actress directly but also indirectly through her supporters. Thomas seems to be indicating that Clark's success isn't just due to her talent. It's possible that part of the reason for Clark's outstanding appeal is her race. Prior to exploring Thomas's specific accusations in more detail, let's first talk about the history of racism in sports. Understanding the broader context of racism in sports is essential. Professional athletes have long been the targets of racist remarks from their fans, particularly from players of color. Racist jokes aimed at soccer players and derogatory remarks made about basketball players on social media are two examples. Alyssa Thomas' accusations are especially harmful because they throw a negative light on her whole fan base. Although racism in sports is clearly a problem, it's still unclear if Alyssa Thomas brought the controversy up to deflect criticism from social media and her own performance. The WNBA, or Women's National Basketball Association, has demonstrated a strong commitment to social justice issues. Gamers talk out about racial injustice on a regular basis, since the Fever got the ball back as a result of Thomas' aggressive play. While the Sun star was complaining to the referees about the call, cameras panned to Clark sticking her tongue out in response to the play, with the video going viral on social media. Fans of Caitlin Clark raced to defend their favorite player as social media went viral in response to Alyssa Thomas' allegations. Hashtag supporting Clark trended as a result of the widespread criticism that Thomas' comments were unfair and unfounded. Commentators on sports also discussed the growing dispute. In addition to pointing out that Thomas had every right to call out the behavior she found objectionable, Supporters of the player pointed out that athletes of color often have a harder time taking criticism from fans. Even so, those who supported Thomas's position were left wondering about the timing of her comments and whether anything might have been done differently given that she made such broad claims. In the absence of any supporting evidence, Thomas has placed herself in a difficult position by irritating a significant portion of WNBA fans in addition to. Additionally, she has encouraged further research into her own actions. Alyssa Thomas's professional history being in the spotlight is nothing new for Alyssa Thomas, one of the Connecticut Sun's top players. She has developed a reputation as a strong, no-nonsense competitor throughout the course of her 11-year career. She is well-liked for her work ethic and leadership qualities, and her physical play has made her a formidable force on the field. There's a lot of pressure to succeed, particularly for a seasoned player like Thomas, who is supposed to lead her team to victory in this situation. Thomas might have been affected by his dissatisfaction with the playoffs. Thomas, who is renowned for her ability to influence the game on both sides of the court and her defensive skills, has emerged as a major player in the WNBA. Thomas has also encountered difficulties recently, as injuries have limited her speed and caused her to play inconsistently in high-stakes games. The weight of expectations also play a part in her outburst, because all athletes are humans and emotions are high, particularly following a tough loss. But was this the right way to deal with her dissatisfaction, considering the history of violent altercations between Thomas and Clark? Alyssa Thomas and Caitlin Clark were once again at the center of controversy after a heated game between the Indiana Fever and the Connecticut Sun earlier this season. As Thomas handed Clark one of the roughest screens in recent memory, the audience gasped in disbelief. The incident soon became the talk of the league, with many fans thinking Clark had sustained a major injury. Although Thomas was given an aggressive foul, the referees took no further action. No clear foul, no ejection, simply a routine call that backers of. The animosity between the two athletes was already smoldering, and this episode fed it. Caitlin Clark was furious, and many took to social media to express their outrage toward Thomas and the officials. This on-court rivalry appears to be the source of Thomas's accusations of racism. Clark's fast-paced, ostentatious style of play contrasted with Thomas's aggressive play style, paving the way for further altercations. The impact of media on narrative framework, one of its most intriguing aspects, is the way the media, from podcasts and blogs on the internet to sports broadcasters like ESPN, has covered this entire story. Regarding the Alyssa Thomas versus Caitlin Clark controversy, everyone seems to have an opinion, but it's important to recognize that the media greatly shapes our perceptions of sports. How much has the media influenced this story, is the question. She seems to be the more mature person in this situation because of Caitlin Clark's cool-headed and collected response, or lack thereof. But media narratives can be deceptive. Some media sources have jumped to Clark's defense and condemned Thomas, but others have adopted a more nuanced stance, recognizing that racism in sports is a serious problem and challenging Thomas's timeliness and lack of supporting data. As a result, the tale is convoluted, disorganized, and devoid of clear solutions. In this instance, Alyssa Thomas' remarks generated a flurry of press that eclipsed her actual performance on the court due to how rapidly they were picked up and emphasized. Thomas Alyssa, the effects and additional consequences. The suspension of Alyssa Thomas is undoubtedly a significant blow to her career. Her absence will be felt by her colleagues, especially as they are still working toward. Success in the postseason is fantastic, but what are the long-term consequences for Thomas personally, aside from the obvious ones on the Suns' performance? First and foremost, she has gained attention from this incident that she probably didn't anticipate, because the controversy has the potential to overshadow all of her prior accomplishments. As a player who has spent more than 10 years in the league building a reputation as a fierce competitor, fans and commentators are currently questioning her decision-making and judgment, both on and off the court, because of the claims that she used the race card in such a visible way, and it's not certain if her reputation will improve. In the long run, Thomas's connections with her coaches and teammates may suffer. To function as a cohesive team, professional athletes require the camaraderie and trust of one another. When there may be disturbances in the locker room, when a player is at the center of a heated and vibrant, will her teammates remain behind her? Or do they believe that her actions have damaged the company's reputation? The WNBA has shown that it is prepared to stand behind its players when it comes to social justice issues. But Thomas's ban also raises doubts about his future in the league. It's unclear what the exact circumstances are here. The league's ability to regulate how its players use public spaces has been compromised by Thomas's statements, which are devoid of hard evidence. Does this punishment mean that the league will support Thomas moving forward? Or might it mean the end of her WNBA career? The NBA's response amidst the public relations disaster in light of the league. How does the WNBA manage this difficult circumstance? In terms of advancing social justice, the league has always positioned itself as a leader. The WNBA has difficulties managing its relationship with supporters in addition to pushing players to speak out against racial injustice and inequity. Large portions of the fan base could become hostile to allegations, such as Thomas's, especially to those who feel unfairly accused of racism for just cheering on a specific player or team. The league needs to figure out how to handle these issues, while still upholding an atmosphere that is welcoming and considerate of everyone. Furthermore, the way the media has reported this dispute has fanned the flames, with different outlets expressing drastically different opinions. To avoid appearing to take sides in a way that would worsen tensions between players and fans, the WNBA must be careful in how it presents its own stance. The WNBA is now balancing on very thin ground, had stated differently. The way the league handles Alyssa Thomas's suspension will have a long-term effect on how fans view it and how it views its players. It's not just Alyssa Thomas who has faced criticism for how she handled racial slurs or other controversial accusations. In fact, there have been a lot of similar situations in the annals of professional sports, and examining them can help us comprehend how Thomas might weather the storm or how the repercussions might get worse. Colin Kaepernick, a former NFL quarterback, is a notable example of this. He protested racial injustice by kneeling during the national anthem. A national dialogue was initiated by the Justice Caper protest. He became well known as a representative of the resistance to racial injustice, but he also came under fire and even lost his NFL job. Both players obviously utilized their platforms. The key difference is that, in contrast to Thomas' assertions, Kevin had a clear message and made a specific action, kneeling to address racial concerns, and both received strong reactions. Clarity and proof. Another example comes from European soccer, where racist taunts directed at players of color are commonplace. Different teams and leagues have addressed this issue in different ways, from outlawing racist fans to starting initiatives to promote equality. The WNBA may wish to bear this in mind as it negotiates the need to respond to claims of racism with precision and consistency, as these cases demonstrate. Repercussions of the Thomas Clark controversy. The most important lesson to be taken away from these past scandals, if Alyssa Thomas hopes to move past this, is that an athlete's reaction to criticism is just as important as the problem itself. Incident, she will have to accept responsibility for her words and apologize. She should also explain what she said and have meaningful talks with fans and sportsmen. The way in which sports-related conflicts escalate in today's society is greatly influenced by social media. The story about athletes and sports scandals in Alyssa Thomas's case was the impetus that turned her post-game comments into a major controversy just hours after she was charged. On Twitter, Instagram, and sports forums, opinions on all sides of the issue were prevalent. How quickly this argument went viral on the internet is noteworthy. Following Thomas's comments, supporters of Caitlin Clark flocked to social media to defend their athlete and express their outrage at being labeled as bigots. Supporting hashtags for Thomas and Clark began to trend. Popular, with heated debate raging across multiple platforms. Unlike traditional media, where stories are reported and then gradually understood, social media adds complexity to these situations. Rather, real-time replies fueled more often by passion than logic are made possible by social media. The ferocity and magnitude of the social media backlash demonstrate the potency of these platforms in exaggerating disputes. It is more important than ever for athletes to be conscious of how their comments will be perceived and magnified online. Alyssa Thomas has found that the power of social media has been a double-edged sword. Although it has given her a platform to voice her opinions, it has also led to swift criticism of her. In Thomas's case, however, her fans continued to stand by her, despite the lack of proof for her assertions, has further heightened the opposition to her. With everyone a mess, and only one person having said very little, what will become of Caitlin Clark? Alyssa Thomas's primary target for her charges was Caitlin Clark. Despite not asking to be a part of the scandal, Clark has managed it very effectively by avoiding the fray and declining to participate in the drama. She has gained the admiration of her followers and demonstrated professionalism and maturity, which will enable her to continue her career while Alyssa Thomas remains in the public eye. Clark is impacted by the controversy, even though her choice to remain focused on her game has only helped to further establish her reputation as one of the NBA's most gifted players, because of the controversy caused by accusations of racism made against her fan base. For the time being, it appears that Clark's strategy of being silent is working. Eventually, she may need to confront the issue. Whether she chooses to do so in a more reserved manner or through a public statement remains to be seen. Alyssa Thomas's ban is a game changer for the WNBA as a whole, not just for her particular controversy. Its future response to cases like hers will depend on how the league handles this one. Will it uphold the integrity of the league by making players accountable for unproven allegations, or will it stand by athletes like Thomas, who denounce racism even in cases where the evidence is ambiguous? This suspension is a wake-up call for Alyssa Thomas, and how she responds to it in the coming weeks will determine whether or not she plays in the NBA going forward. The Alyssa Thomas scandal serves as a warning that even the best-laid plans can backfire on supporters, athletes, and the league as a whole. For better or worse, this occasion will be seen as a watershed that will influence the WNBA's future. Will she keep trying to deflect criticism from what she did in court? Even with all of the turmoil around her, Caitlin Clark's star is still rising. Clark has been able to put aside the fray and concentrate on what she does best, which is play basketball. Ultimately, Clark will continue to be the WNBA's face for many years to come, thanks to her ability to maintain her composure and professionalism.